The Arxian Empire was the strongest power in the galaxy. For thousands of years they had conquered and ruled over countless alien worlds. Their massive ships traveled between stars, bringing new planets under their control. Their technology was advanced beyond what most species could imagine. Their warriors were feared across all known space. Earth had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Humans were still new to space travel when the Arxian scouts found them. The aliens looked down on humans as weak newcomers. Humans were smaller than many alien species. They did not have claws or natural armor. They could not breathe toxic air or survive extreme temperatures without help. But some Arxians noticed something different about humans. They watched how quickly humans learned to use alien technology. They saw how humans adapted to new situations. A few high-ranking Arxian military officers warned their leaders to be careful around these strange beings from Earth. John Harper was one of the best xenolinguists on Earth. He could understand and speak 7 alien languages. He was especially good with the complex Arxian language, with its clicks and rumbling tones that human throats struggled to make. The Arxian government hired him to translate their ancient military texts into English. John's younger brother Kevin worked with him. Kevin had a natural talent for languages too, though he wasn't as famous as John. The brothers were close, having lost their parents in a shuttle accident years ago. They were all the family each other had. "Look at this section again," John said one evening as they worked late in their small office. The walls were covered with Arxian symbols and human notes. The translation matrix keeps giving strange results for these passages. Kevin leaned over the glowing screen. "You're right. It's like there's a code within the language itself." The brothers worked for weeks on the problem. They realized that certain military texts contained hidden messages. These messages were only visible if you understood a secret pattern in the writing, and what they found was shocking. "The Empire isn't as strong as everyone thinks," Kevin whispered one night, eyes wide as he looked up from his work. "Their entire military network runs through one central system. Everything. Their fleets, their weapons, their communications, all of it can be controlled from a single location." John nodded slowly. "And they've hidden this fact for thousands of years. They've created the image of having separate, independent command structures." "It's brilliant," Kevin said. "No one would think to look for one central weakness in something so vast." They kept their discovery secret. The information was too dangerous. If the wrong people found out, it could destabilize the galaxy. Or worse, it could put Earth in danger if the Arxians thought humans knew too much. The brothers continued their official work, translating texts about Arxian battle tactics and military history. But privately, they studied the hidden patterns more deeply. They learned about the location of the central command node, disguised as a religious monument on the Arxian homeworld. Neither brother had any plan to use this information. They were scholars, not fighters or revolutionaries. They simply found the discovery fascinating from an academic perspective. One day, John woke up with a mild fever. "You should go to the meeting without me," he told Kevin, his voice hoarse. "The Arxian diplomatic team won't wait. Just take notes and I'll review them when you get back." Kevin nodded, gathering his materials. "Rest up, I'll handle it." John watched his brother leave their apartment. Kevin looked professional in his translator's uniform, a tablet of notes under his arm. He waved from the doorway. "See you tonight?" Kevin called. "Don't forget to take your medicine." John had no way of knowing that this would be the last time he would see his brother alive. He had no idea that in sending Kevin to that meeting, he had set in motion events that would bring down the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known. Kevin Harper arrived at the massive Arxian flagship called the Eternal Dominion. The ship was huge, bigger than many human cities. Its dark purple metal hull gleamed in the sunlight. Kevin had been on Arxian ships before, but the flagship always made him feel small. He showed his translator badge to the guards. They looked down at him with their 4 yellow eyes, making clicking sounds to each other. Arxians were tall with scaled skin and long limbs. They thought humans looked weak and soft. "The diplomatic meeting is on level 7, said one guard in broken English. "Do not wander from your assigned area." Kevin nodded politely. He took the gravity lift up to level 7. There he met the junior Arxian diplomats who were hosting the meeting. 3 young nobles were present. They were from important families but were new to diplomatic work. This meeting was just practice for them. "Welcome, human translator," said the tallest noble. "We will discuss trade agreements between your mining colonies and our food distribution networks." Kevin sat at the large table and began taking notes. The meeting was routine and somewhat boring. The nobles talked slowly, making sure Kevin could keep up with their language. 2 hours passed this way. Then the ship's announcement system made a loud noise. A voice spoke rapidly in the Arxian language. "What's happening?" Kevin asked, not understanding the fast announcement. One of the nobles looked concerned. "They said something about a military exercise, but this room is not scheduled for—" Suddenly the doors locked with a heavy clicking sound. Red lights began flashing. On a screen at the front of the room, the face of an Arxian military leader appeared. Kevin recognized him as High Commander Zexthar, one of the most powerful figures in the Empire. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" asked one of the nobles. The High Commander looked at them coldly. "An unfortunate situation. The weapons test cannot be stopped without great embarrassment to the military division. Your sacrifice will be honored." The nobles began shouting in anger and fear. Kevin didn't understand everything they were saying, but he knew something was very wrong. He tried to call for help on his communication device, but it wasn't working. "Please," Kevin said to the screen. "There must be some mistake. I'm a civilian, translator from Earth." The High Commander barely looked at Kevin. "The room will be cleared in 10 seconds. Your families will receive the standard compensation package." Kevin ran to the door and tried to force it open. The nobles were shouting at the screen, demanding to be released. One of them mentioned his father, who was apparently someone important. For a brief moment, High Commander Zexthar seemed to reconsider. Then his face hardened again. "The exercise will proceed as planned. Your deaths will serve the greater glory of the Empire." The screen went blank. Kevin felt a wave of heat and saw bright light. Then he felt nothing at all. 3 days later, John Harper was feeling better. His fever was gone. He was working at the Xeno-Linguistic Institute in New Houston, wondering why Kevin hadn't called him. It wasn't like his brother to go so long without checking in. A woman in a formal uniform entered his office. She was from the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Her face was serious. "Mr. Harper, I'm afraid I have difficult news." John stood up, his heart suddenly racing. "What happened? Is it Kevin?" The woman handed him an official document. "There was an incident aboard the Arxian flagship, an equipment malfunction during a scheduled military exercise. Your brother was in a restricted area. I'm very sorry to inform you that he did not survive." John took the document with shaking hands. The words blurred as tears filled his eyes. "This can't be right," he whispered. Kevin would never go into a restricted area. He always followed the rules. The woman looked uncomfortable. "The Arxian Empire has extended their official condolences. They've offered the standard compensation package for accidental civilian deaths." John barely heard her. His mind was stuck on one thought. Kevin was gone. His little brother, his only family, was dead. John sat alone in his apartment. He hadn't moved from the couch in hours. Empty coffee cups and half-eaten meals covered the table in front of him. Pictures of Kevin were spread out everywhere. Kevin as a child, learning to ride a bike. Kevin at his college graduation. Kevin and John at the spaceport on the day they first went off-world together. The official document from the Arxian Empire lay crumpled on the floor. John had read it dozens of times. According to the report, Kevin had wandered into a restricted area during a scheduled military exercise. The report called it an unfortunate accident and offered money as compensation. A soft knock came at the bar door. John didn't answer. The knocking came again, louder this time. "John?" "It's Sam. Please let me in." John sighed and slowly stood up. He opened the door to see Dr. Samantha Wells, his colleague from the Xenolinguistic Institute. Her kind face showed deep concern. "You haven't been answering your calls," she said. "Everyone's worried about you." John let her in but didn't say anything. He went back to the couch and sat down. Samantha followed and sat beside him. "I'm so sorry about Kevin," she said softly. "I know how close you two were." John stared at the wall. "The report is a lie," he said finally. "Kevin would never go into a restricted area. He was too careful, too professional." Samantha put her hand on his shoulder. "I know. I didn't believe it either." They sat in silence for a long time. Eventually, Samantha convinced John to eat something. She cleaned up the apartment a little while he showered and changed his clothes for the first time in days. "What are you going to do now?" she asked as she was leaving. John's voice was flat. "I don't know. Nothing seems to matter anymore." After Samantha left, John sat at his computer. He should go through Kevin's things. He should call their friends and extended family. He should plan a memorial service. But he couldn't bring himself to do any of it. Instead, he logged into Kevin's personal cloud storage. The brothers had shared their passwords long ago in case anything ever happened to either of them. John wasn't looking for anything specific. He just wanted to feel close to his brother again. He found work files, personal photos, and music Kevin had liked. Then John noticed a folder called Backup Arxian Meetings. He opened it and found audio and video files from Kevin's translator work. John clicked on the most recent file, dated the day Kevin died. The video showed the meeting room from Kevin's perspective. John watched as Kevin took notes while the Arxian nobles discussed trade agreements. Then came the announcement, the flashing red lights, the doors locking. John's heart raced as he watched the face of High Commander Zexthar appear on the screen. He listened to the cold words. "The weapons test cannot be stopped without great embarrassment to the military division. Your sacrifice will be honored." John watched his brother plead for his life. He saw the screen go blank, then static. Tears streamed down John's face, but now they were tears of anger as well as grief. The Arxians had lied. Kevin hadn't wandered into a restricted area. He had been exactly where he was supposed to be. The Arxians had knowingly killed him and then changed the official record to cover up what really happened. John replayed the video, focusing on every detail. He noticed that Kevin's translator badge had been recording everything. The audio picked up the Arxian nobles saying something about a new weapon test that had been moved up without proper notification. This wasn't just an accident. This was a deliberate choice made by High Commander Zexthar. He had decided that killing everyone in that room was better than stopping the weapons test and losing face. John reached for his phone. His hands were shaking with rage as he dialed a number. "Greg, it's John Harper. I need your help. They killed Kevin. And I have proof." Gregory Bowman arrived at John's apartment late that night. He was a big man with a serious face and short, gray hair. Greg had been in Special Forces for 20 years before retiring to work security for human diplomats. He and John had met 5 years ago during a diplomatic mission to an Arxian colony world. "Show me what you found," Greg said after they greeted each other. John played the video. Greg watched without speaking, his face growing darker with each minute. When it ended, he sat back in his chair and took a deep breath. "They murdered him," Greg said. "And then they changed the official record to blame him for being in the wrong place." John nodded. "They didn't just kill him, Greg, they erased him. Made him responsible for his own death." Greg stood up and paced the small living room. "What do you want to do with this? We could take it to Earth government, but they won't do much. Humans are still too small in galactic politics to challenge the Arxian Empire directly." "I want justice," John said. His voice was quiet but firm. "I want everyone to know what really happened. I want High Commander Zexthar to pay for what he did." Greg looked at his friend for a long time. "That's a dangerous path, John. The Empire has stood for thousands of years. They don't take challenges lightly." "I don't care," John said. "Will you help me?" Greg nodded slowly. "I'll help you. But we can't do this alone. We need a team." Over the next week, John and Greg reached out to people they trusted. People who had their own reasons to dislike the Arxian Empire. People with special skills. Olivia Martinez was the first to join them. She was a brilliant hacker who could get into almost any computer system. Her parents had been killed 3 years ago when Arxian ships bombed a small human colony. The Empire had called it an accident, but Olivia never believed that. "I've been waiting for a chance to hit back at them," she told John when they met in a quiet cafe. "Count me in." Next came Daniel Wright, a former military engineer. He had been discharged after he publicly criticized the Arxians for breaking treaty agreements. Daniel knew more about Arxian technology than almost any other human. "Their tech isn't as advanced as they want everyone to believe," Daniel explained during their first meeting. "They've been using the same basic systems for centuries. They just keep it secret and pretend they're more powerful than they really are." The last person to join the team was Lisa Coleman, a xenobiologist who specialized in Arxian physiology. Lisa had developed medical treatment specifically for Arxians, only to have her research stolen and turned into weapons. "I've spent years studying them," Lisa said. "I know their weaknesses, their pressure points. I know how they think." Together, the five of them began to plan. John shared everything he and Kevin had learned about the Empire's central command system. Olivia worked on creating a virus that could infiltrate Arxian networks. Daniel designed small devices that could disrupt Arxian security systems. Lisa provided insights into Arxian behavior and biology that would help them move undetected. "The central command node is on the Arxian homeworld," John explained, as they gathered around a digital map. "It's disguised as their most important religious site, the Grand Temple of Eternal Light." "How do we get there?" Greg asked. "The homeworld is heavily guarded." John smiled for the first time since Kevin's death. "We go in plain sight. As a cultural delegation studying Arxian architecture, Kevin and I were invited months ago. The invitation is still valid." "Once we're inside?" Olivia asked. "We reveal the truth," John said. "Not just about Kevin, but about everything the Empire has done. All their lies, all their crimes against their own people and other species. We make sure everyone in the galaxy sees it." The others nodded. It was a simple plan in concept, but incredibly dangerous in execution. If they failed, they would all die. If they succeeded, they would change the galaxy forever. 2 weeks later, John and his team arrived on Arx Prime, the homeworld of the Arxian Empire. Their small shuttle landed at the capital city spaceport. Tall buildings made of dark purple metal and glowing crystals stretched into the sky. Thousands of Arxians moved through the streets, along with members of other alien species who served the Empire. The team wore the formal uniforms of Earth's cultural exchange program. Their papers identified them as scholars studying ancient Arxian architecture. Greg had used his connections to make sure all the documents looked real. "Remember," John told the others as they waited to go through security, "act interested but respectful. We're just here to learn about their amazing culture." The Arxian security officers scanned their documents. One of them, taller than the others, looked at John carefully. "You are Harper?" the officer asked in the clicking Arxian language. "We were expecting 2 Harpers." John kept his face calm, though his heart was racing. "My brother Kevin was supposed to come, but he died recently in an accident aboard an Arxian vessel." The officer made a formal gesture of sympathy, touching his upper right hand to his chest. "The Empire extends condolences for your loss." They passed through security without further problems. A small transport took them to their hotel near the Grand Temple. From their windows, they could see the massive structure glowing on top of a hill in the center of the city. "It's bigger than I expected," Olivia said, as she pretended to take tourist photos while actually scanning for electronic security systems. "The temple is over 2,000 years old," John explained for the benefit of anyone who might be listening. "It was built to honor the first emperor who united all Arxian territories." That night, they went over their plan one more time. Daniel had smuggled in his disruptor devices by hiding them inside ordinary items like pens and watches. Lisa had prepared small vials of a harmless bacteria that would cause Arxian skin to change color temporarily. Olivia had her specialized virus ready on a data chip that looked like a religious token sold to tourists. "The tour starts at midday tomorrow," Greg said. "We'll have about 30 minutes inside the inner sanctum before the next group comes through." The next morning, they joined a group of 20 tourists from various worlds. Their guide was a young Arxian priest who spoke several languages. He led them through the outer courtyards of the Grand Temple, explaining the religious significance of different areas. "And now we will enter the inner sanctum of eternal light," the guide announced after an hour. "This is the most sacred space in all Arxian territory. Please maintain respectful silence." The tourists followed him through a massive doorway into a circular room. The walls were covered with ancient Arxian writing. In the center stood a crystal column that reached from floor to ceiling, glowing with a soft blue light. John recognized it immediately from the ancient texts he had studied. This wasn't just a religious monument. It was the physical housing of the Empire's central command node. Lisa moved close to one of the guard stations and pretended to trip. As she steadied herself, she released the vial of bacteria into the air. Circulation system near the guard. Within minutes, the guard's face began changing color, purple spots appearing on his scales. He looked at his hands in alarm as they too began to show spots. "Help!" the guard called out. "I need medical assistance." More guards came running. The first guard's condition was spreading to them as they got close. The guide hurried the tourists toward the exit, concern in his 4 eyes. "Please, a minor medical situation," the guide said. "We must clear the room temporarily." As the tourists moved toward the door, John, Greg, and Olivia stayed back, pretending to be concerned and confused. Daniel moved quietly around the edges of the room, placing his tiny disruptor devices in hidden spots. In the confusion, John and Olivia slipped behind the crystal column. There, just as the ancient texts had described, was a small control panel disguised as a prayer station. John knelt as if in prayer while Olivia worked quickly to access the system. "How much time do we have?" John whispered. Olivia's fingers moved rapidly over the hidden controls. "Maybe 5 minutes before they realize we're not with the tour group." John watched the guards dealing with their mysteriously changing skin. Lisa had joined the other tourists but was delaying them with questions about what was happening. Daniel had placed the last disruptor and was now creating a distraction by loudly demanding to speak to a manager about the interrupted tour. "I'm in," Olivia said softly. John watched as Olivia's fingers moved rapidly over the hidden control panel. The ancient Arxian symbols glowed in response to her touch. Thanks to John's knowledge of old Arxian command codes, they were able to bypass the initial security measures. "I need to insert the virus now," Olivia whispered. She took out the small data chip that looked like a religious token. "Once I put this in, we'll have about 2 minutes before the system detects something is wrong." John nodded. "Do it." Olivia plugged the chip into a slot in the panel. The blue glow of the crystal column flickered briefly. "Upload beginning," she said, watching the progress on a small screen. 10%, 20%. Across the room, the Arxian guards were still distracted by their mysteriously changing skin. Their scales now showed bright purple spots that were slowly spreading. Medical staff had arrived and were examining them in confusion. 30%, 40%, Olivia continued. One of the senior guards looked around the room, counting the tourists. His eyes narrowed when he realized 2 humans were missing. "Where are the other Earth people?" he demanded. Daniel stepped forward, still playing his role as an angry tourist. "This is outrageous. I paid good money for this tour and now it's ruined by your medical problems." The guard pushed past Daniel and started walking toward the crystal column. 60%, 70%, Olivia whispered urgently. Greg moved to intercept the guard. "Excuse me, officer, can you tell me what's happening? Is this some kind of disease we should be worried about?" The guard ignored him and kept walking. He was only a few steps away from discovering John and Olivia behind the column. 80%, 90%. Lisa created one final distraction by pretending to faint. The tourist gasped and gathered around her. Even the approaching guard hesitated, torn between his duty to check the column and the commotion among the tourists. "Upload complete," Olivia whispered. She removed the chip and quickly closed the access panel. John and Olivia stepped out from behind the column just as the guard turned back toward them. "What were you doing there?" the guard demanded, his spotted hand moving to his weapon. "We were praying," John said calmly. In our culture, we pray in private spaces when visiting holy sites. The guard looked suspicious, but before he could question them further, every screen in the temple suddenly activated. The face of High Commander Zexthar appeared, along with the interior of the meeting room where Kevin had died. The tourists and guards all turned to watch as the unaltered footage played. They saw Kevin and the Arxian nobles trapped in the room. They heard the High Commander's cold decision. The weapons test cannot be stopped without great embarrassment to the military division. Your sacrifice will be honored. The Arxians in the temple made sounds of shock and dismay. One of the priests dropped to his knees, his four eyes wide with horror. But the video didn't stop there. More footage began playing on screens throughout the temple. Secret recordings of the Imperial Council planning attacks on peaceful worlds. Records of atrocities committed against the Empire's own people. Evidence of how the ruling caste had deliberately weakened their military to prevent internal revolts. "What have you done?" the guard asked, staring at John with a mixture of fear and rage. "We revealed the truth," John said simply. "That's all." Outside the temple, they could hear shouting. Through the windows, they saw that every public screen in the city was showing the same footage. Citizens were stopping in the streets to watch. Olivia checked a small device in her pocket. "It's working," she said quietly. "The virus is spreading through their entire network. Every communication channel in the Empire is broadcasting the truth." Daniel joined them, his face serious. "We need to get out of here now. My disruptors will prevent them from shutting down the broadcast for at least 6 hours, but they'll be looking for us soon." Greg nodded. "I've already called our shuttle pilot. He'll meet us at the emergency exit in 5 minutes." As they prepared to leave, John took one last look at the screen showing his brother's final moments. "This isn't just for you, Kevin," he whispered. "It's for everyone they've ever hurt." They slipped out of the temple as chaos began to spread through the holy site. Guards were receiving frantic communications from their superiors. Priests were trying to shut down the screens. Tourists were recording everything on their own devices, sending the footage to their home worlds. John and his team made it to their shuttle just as alarms began sounding across the capital city. Greg used his security clearance to get them through the final checkpoint, where the guards were too distracted by the chaos unfolding on their communication devices to look closely at the humans' papers. As their shuttle lifted off, they could see crowds gathering in the streets below. Arxians were pointing at public screens, some shouting, others standing in shocked silence. "We need to get off planet before they close the spaceports," the pilot said, pushing the shuttle to its maximum speed. They watched through the view screen as other ships rushed to leave Arx Prime. Some were diplomatic vessels carrying ambassadors from various worlds. Others belonged to wealthy Arxians attempting to flee before the situation got worse. "Look at that," Daniel said, pointing to a large military vessel in orbit. The ship was firing on another Arxian warship. "It's starting already. The military is fracturing." "The lower castes have always resented the ruling families," Lisa explained. "Now they know they've been deliberately kept weak and divided." Their shuttle managed to slip past the orbital defenses during the confusion. Once they were safely away from Arx Prime, Olivia connected to the galactic news feeds. "It's everywhere," she said, showing them her screen. "Every planet in the Empire is seeing the truth. And it's not just about Kevin. The virus unlocked every secret file in their system." The team watched as images flashed across the screen. On one Arxian colony world, the workers were rising up against their overseers. On another, the local military commander had declared independence from the Empire. Ships from subjugated species were breaking formation, some turning against their Arxian commanders. They received a secure communication from Samantha Wells back on Earth. "John, are you watching this?" Her voice was filled with disbelief. "The whole Empire is falling apart. The Earth government is trying to figure out what's happening." "We're safe, Sam," John replied. "We're on our way to the neutral zone." 6 hours after they had uploaded the virus, they docked at a small trading station on the edge of Arxian space. From there, they could monitor events throughout the galaxy without being in immediate danger. A local news vendor, a 3-armed alien from a species John didn't recognize, was selling special data chips with updates about the rapidly changing situation. Never seen anything like it, the vendor told them. Biggest story in 1,000 years. The mighty empire crumbling in a single day. They rented a private viewing room and plugged in the data chips. The screens showed scenes of chaos from across Arxian territory. On Arx Prime, the Imperial Palace was surrounded by angry citizens. High Commander Zexthar had tried to activate emergency protocols to shut down the broadcasts, but the command structure was completely compromised. The virus had spread too far, too fast. The ruling council had turned on each other, each member blaming the others for the security breach. 3 counselors had already been killed by their own guards. In the outer colonies, governors were declaring independence. Long-suppressed resistance movements were emerging from hiding. Ships from a dozen different species were abandoning their assigned posts. Look at that, Greg said, pointing to one screen. A fleet of warships belonging to the Arxian 3rd Naval Division had turned against the 1st Naval Division. They're fighting each other now. The Empire kept them divided for centuries, John said quietly. Different castes, different colony, worlds, different military divisions, all reporting to the Central Command, all carefully balanced against each other. Once that central control was gone, Olivia checked the time. It's been 11 hours since we uploaded the virus. The biggest shock came when the Arxian homeworld itself fractured. The lower castes, long treated as second-class citizens, rose up against their rulers. Provincial governors declared themselves independent from the capital. Religious leaders, horrified by the revelations that their sacred temple had been used to house a military command center, called for the emperor to step down. By the 12th hour, the once mighty Arxian Empire had effectively ceased to exist as a unified power. What remained were hundreds of disconnected territories, ships, and military units, all suddenly on their own for the first time in thousands of years. 3 days after the collapse began, John sat alone in the observation deck of a small transport ship heading back to Earth. The stars streaked by outside the window as they traveled through faster-than-light space. He held a small picture of Kevin in his hands, looking at his brother's smiling face. John felt empty. He had expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even happiness, after bringing down the empire that killed his brother. Instead, he felt a strange mixture of sadness and shock at how quickly it had all fallen apart. The door to the observation deck slid open. Samantha Wells walked in and sat down next to him. She had arrived at the trading station yesterday with a diplomatic vessel from Earth. Earth government knows it was you, she said quietly. They're not sure whether to arrest you or give you a medal. John shrugged. I don't care either way. Samantha looked at him carefully. Do you realize what you've done? The Arxian Empire stood for 10,000 years. It ruled most of the known galaxy, and you brought it down in 12 hours. Not me. The truth did that, John replied. If their empire was so fragile that it couldn't survive people knowing the truth, then it deserved to fall. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. I monitored your team's activities, you know, Samantha finally said. I knew what you were planning. John looked up in surprise. You knew? Why didn't you stop us? Because I agreed with what you were doing. The Empire was cruel and corrupt, but I was also afraid of what would come next. She handed him a datapad. This just came through. Representatives from 20 former Imperial worlds want to meet with Earth diplomats. They're asking for our help in forming a new galactic coalition. John looked at the message without much interest. What does that have to do with me? They're asking for you specifically. They know you were behind the collapse. They don't want revenge. They want your help rebuilding something better. John shook his head. I'm done. I did what I did for Kevin, not to change the galaxy. Samantha put her hand on his arm. John, what happened to the Empire wasn't just destruction. It was also creation, a chance for something new, something better. Don't you think Kevin would want you to be part of that? John looked again at his brother's picture. Kevin had always been the optimistic one, always looking for ways to bring people together. As the ship continued toward Earth, The team gathered in the common area. Greg, Olivia, Daniel, and Lisa were discussing their plans for the future, Earth. Military wants to hire me back, Daniel said. They need experts on Arxian technology now that we're dealing with all these independent systems. I've been offered a position with the diplomatic corps, Lisa added. They need xenobiologists who understand Arxian physiology. Olivia smiled. The cybersecurity division wants me to help them prevent anything like our virus from ever happening. To human systems, ironic, right? Greg looked at John as he entered the room. What about you? What will you do now? John sat down with them, still holding Kevin's picture. Samantha says the former Imperial worlds want our help. They want to build something new. Are you going to do it? Greg asked. John was quiet for a moment. I thought this was just about revenge, about making them pay for what they did to Kevin, but now I'm not so sure. He placed Kevin's picture on the table where they could all see it. Maybe it wasn't for revenge in the end, little brother. Maybe it was for what comes next. The ship's communication system chimed. A message was coming through from one of the former Arxian military commanders. The team gathered around the screen as John accepted the call. The Arxian on the screen was older, his scales faded with age. He had been a general in the Imperial forces, now leading one of the largest former colony worlds. Mr. Harper, the general said formally, I wish to speak with you about the future. My people are lost without the Empire, but we do not wish to return to the old ways. The general paused, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. You dismantled an empire that stood for 10,000 years, not with warships or armies, but with the truth. Perhaps you humans truly are the most dangerous species we've ever encountered, or perhaps you are exactly what this galaxy needs right now. John looked at Kevin's picture one last time, then faced the screen with new determination. Let's talk about that future, he said.